All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to jump into a really big one, a foundational question in Christian theology. What does it actually mean when the Bible calls Jesus the Son of God? Because as our source text shows, there's way more to this title than you might think.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll lay out the core question itself. Then, we'll dig into why God needed to become human in the first place. After that, we'll get into the real meat of it, the two key titles, Only Begotten Son and Firstborn Son. We'll figure out what firstborn really means, and then, we'll tie it all together at the end.
So let's kick things off by setting up the central problem we're here to solve. This is a concept that's right at the heart of Christian belief, so getting this part right is pretty crucial for everything else.
Right, so here's the question. What does it mean that the second person of God is the Son of God? And according to our source material, this isn't a simple one-line answer. It's actually this incredible journey, a story that goes from the heights of divinity all the way down into our human reality and then back up to a place of ultimate authority.
Okay, so to even start answering that question, our source text tells us we have to back up a step. We need to understand the why, the purpose behind God becoming human. Why did that have to happen at all? Well, the source points us to this passage right here from Hebrews to get at the main motivation. And the idea, it's pretty radical. The thought is that he became human to take on humanity's biggest enemy, death itself, but from the inside. It's this incredible act of solidarity, of liberation. And if you break that quote down, you can see it's basically a three-part mission. Think of it like a spiritual rescue operation. The first goal, destroy the devil's power over death. Second, free us from that slavery to fear. And the third, which is so crucial, was to do all this by becoming one of us, by sharing in our flesh and blood. But there's a second purpose our source highlights, and this is where things get, really interesting with a subtle little detail. It points to a psalm that talks about humanity's place in the whole cosmic order. And pay attention to the word choice here. In the original Hebrew, it says humanity was made a little lower than Elohim, which, that's a word that usually means God or gods, not just angels.
Okay, but here's the twist. When the New Testament comes along and quotes that exact same verse in Hebrews, the Greek word used is angelos, which specifically means angels. Now, according to our source, this isn't some translation error. No, it's a deliberate theological move. It's reframing the verse to be about Jesus, the Son, who, even though he was divine, chose to take on a position lower than the angels for a while by becoming human.
So the big point our source is making is this. That whole descent into a lower status, becoming human and temporarily being lower than the angels, it wasn't a demotion. It was a temporary but absolutely necessary part of the mission. It was the only path that led through suffering and death to the ultimate prize, glory, honor, and dominion over all of creation.
And that right there brings us to the absolute heart of this whole explainer. Our source text points out this super critical distinction between two titles. Titles that, honestly, most of us probably use without thinking about it. Only Begotten Son and Firstborn Son. They sound similar, but they mean very different things.
Okay, so let's tackle the first one, Only Begotten Son. The source connects this title directly to his divine nature, right? This is about his identity as God, as the Creator. And that word only is the key. It's all about his uniqueness. He's one of a kind, in a category all by himself. All right, now let's look at the second title, Firstborn Son. And this one is totally different. It's not about his eternal divinity, it's about his resurrected humanity. As the firstborn, he's the trailblazer, the one who went through death and came out the other side. He's the head of a whole new family, a new creation, and we, humanity, are his siblings.
And this slide right here, this really nails the core distinction our source is making. See, the two titles aren't contradictory. They're like two sides of the same coin. He is the only begotten Son because of his divine nature, and he is the firstborn Son because of his resurrected human nature. One title tells you who he is, the other tells you what he did.
So that leads to a pretty big question, right? If he's the firstborn, the head of this new creation, what kind of leader is he? Well, our source suggests that the answer to that question is going to flip everything you thought you knew about leadership on its head.
Make no mistake, according to the source text, that title firstborn means exactly what you think it means. It means being number one, the head, the leader, the supreme ruler of this new creation.
But, and this is the huge paradox, the way you become number one in this new reality isn't through power or force or domination.
It's the exact opposite. It's through service. This quote says it all. True leadership, true greatness, is defined by your willingness to be a slave, to serve, and to sacrifice.
So our source basically lays out this three-step path of the firstborn. Step 1, you have to choose to become a servant, to take the lowest spot. Step 2, you sacrifice yourself for your siblings, for others. And step 3, by doing that, you set the example. You blaze the trail for everyone else to follow into that new life.
All right, let's bring it all home now. Let's put all these pieces together and see the complete picture that our source text has been painting for us.
So as we've seen, the second person of God is both of these things at once. He's the creator and he's the head of creation. The titles only begotten and firstborn aren't at odds with each other. They're totally complementary. They show us how one person can bridge that massive gap between an infinite God and us, finite human beings.
And this table from our source really makes it crystal clear, doesn't it? As the only begotten Son, his identity is the Creator God, and his realm is eternity and divinity. But as the firstborn Son, and remember, that's a title he earned through his resurrection, his identity becomes supreme ruler, and his realm is right here, in time and creation. He's the Lord of both.
And that leaves us with one last kind of provocative thought. Because understanding all this, it's not just some abstract theology lesson, right? It's a radical model for leadership, one that says true greatness comes from service and real authority is earned through sacrifice. So the final question our source leaves us with is a personal one. If that's the example of the firstborn Son, what does it mean to follow it?